Hey everyone, great to have you here. Welcome back to Demand Gen Live. We got a couple announcements coming up. First, I'll be speaking in San Diego next Wednesday, which will be really cool with the Traffic and Conversion Summit. If anyone's in the area, feel free to stop by. Also, we'll be in San Diego from Monday to Wednesday if you want to meet up, do a podcast, any other thing, have some drinks, whatever. So feel free to reach out to me if you'll be in San Diego. That would be cool. I think that's the only announcement we have, so we'll move on from there. And I think we're going to get started today. It's a really interesting question. It's something that I've been talking about a little bit. It's a question that I asked to myself a lot. I actually, a couple of months ago, had surveyed about 30 director, VP, and CMO marketers about where they get their marketing strategy from. And the most interesting part of that question is that a lot of people don't really know. And so they give you the answers that they can think of. And the answers they can think of, MarTech vendors, Gartner, anecdotal feedback from peers, ad tech vendors like a Facebook or a Google or things like that, agencies and consultancies. Those are the answers that you get. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's my strategy," but if you really think about it, it originated from one of those 5 things that I said, and then it got into your brain, or it got into your company, and it became a strategy. So it's really interesting to think about not where you got it from, but where did it originate. And so we're going to go through that. First, I did a little bit of pre-reading. The pre-reading that I did today was from the Gartner CMO Spend Survey 2020-2021. I'll just pull out a couple of little excerpts here because it's really interesting. So there's a quote here toward the middle of the article that says, "CMOs remain under pressure to cut labor and other costs," says a Gartner of analysts. "Long-term budget cuts will require another look at staffing that could result in permanent changes to hiring and organizational makeup." And then the next heading of the article literally says, "Marketing technology budgets will remain strong in 2021. It makes absolutely no sense. So CMOs are over here cutting labor, cutting program costs, spending, and then Gartner's like, "Oh, but they're going to be spending a lot more on technology." So I want people to think what the survey reported. The highest line item in the 432 CMOs that were surveyed here, the biggest line item in their budget was 26% of budget spent on technology. The next closest was 25% spent on programs. It's really hard to believe, at least for me, it's really hard to believe that you can spend more on technology than programs. Programs are the most important. But if we really think, and this is kind of where I'm going here, is where does your strategy come from? The way that I see it, and the way that I've been observing B2B marketing for the past 10 years, it has gotten increasingly systematic, driven through the adoption of technology. The adoption of technology brought on email automation. It brings in all of these things that are supposed to be wish list things for marketers, where you just hook it up, you don't need to do anything, and automatically you start hitting some type of metric and you drive a bunch of revenue and blah, 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 blah. The thing is that what's happening is that marketers are over adopting technology and over relying on technology and have a complete lack of marketing fundamentals. It'd be really interesting to think. So we got CMO budgets, 26% spent on technology. How much is spent talking to customers? How much money is spent on that? I survey marketing teams that a single person on the marketing team doesn't talk to a customer. But there's, $5 million budget. They're spending 1.5, 1.25, something like that, $1 million on tech. And so I want to talk through, because the reason that the technology is at 26% of budget is not because you need to spend 26% of budget on technology. It's because of where you get your information from. And so it's because of where you get your information. So where marketing teams, where the actual strategy originates, here's what happens. Marketing technology vendors have a product. They take the product and then they go to analyst firms that they pay. Those analyst firms could be Gartner or otherwise. There's plenty of them in the EU. It's not only Gartner. They go to the analyst firms and they pay them to try and figure out how to position the product. The analyst firms figure out how to position the product. They talk that back to the MarTech vendor, and then the analyst firm builds in messaging. So you notice when everything changed to account-based, everything that Gartner was saying and Forrester was saying also changed to account-based. When the evolution of intent data came, all that stuff changed. And then you have marketing technology vendors that are marketing like they're supposed to. And then you have analyst firms that are advising, in quotations here. And it's all in perfect harmony. Everything's great. They're singing from the exact same sheet of music. Marketers eat it up. Companies eat it up. Executives eat it up. Then there are large enterprise corporations and even small companies for that matter, where the mindset inside of those companies from a marketing team level, from a CMO level, is I'll never get fired for doing what Gartner says. I'll never get fired for putting what Gartner has in a slide onto my deck. And so then they do that and they listen to the recommendations of what's being given, which is to adopt more technology. So those messages are getting driven into the market, people are adopting it, and then what happens, and this is where you actually get the strategy most likely, is that there's secondary distribution and tertiary distribution that happens after that. The MarTech vendor does marketing, they speak at a conference, the people at the conference then move out and they start talking to their peers in communities, in Slack channels, in word of mouth, in DMs, posting on social, those types of places. And that is most likely where you get the strategy, but I just told you where it originated from. It originated from a MarTech vendor that started to work with an analyst firm to figure out how to position the product to drive it into the market. And so what you'll never hear, I read enough of these reports, the things that you never hear about, I mentioned it a lot. I haven't heard one of these firms talk about a podcast. A podcast is probably one of the best marketing executions that you could do in marketing today, and it has been for the past 3 years. Not one mention of a podcast because there's no technology to sell around it. You can't sell attribution on it. There's really no value to those companies. Additionally, you're not going to hear anything about marketing fundamentals. I hear almost nothing from them about marketing fundamentals, talking to customers, positioning the product, doing market research, those types of things. I don't hear a lot about those vendors doing that, and I don't see a lot of marketers actually doing that. The reason is because they want you to think that the technology will solve everything. That's what they want you to know. That's what they want you to think. What they don't want you to think is that you've over-adopted technology and that you over-rely on it, which is what I'm telling you because I believe that I come from a different point of view. I believe that I come from a way less biased point of view than where these people are coming from. And what I see in the market interacting with hundreds of companies is that there's an over-adoption and an over-reliance on technology, which is causing negative side effects. Negative side effects being completely stunts marketing innovation, specifically around attribution, but a ton of other topics as well. Your marketers cannot innovate in the places where your customers are because you over-rely on technology to either measure or deploy things. You miss major business opportunities like a podcast, like LinkedIn, like TikTok's happening right now. All these things are right in front of companies, and almost no B2B companies execute on it. My belief is it's because they're getting information from the wrong place. Your buyers are moving so fast, especially after the pandemic. Things are changing so rapidly, and most companies are falling behind because they get their strategy information from these places. And so what I'm encouraging people to think about, and maybe you should just maybe have a little thought experiment, is where did your marketing strategy come from? It's probably one of the 5 places that I listed there, and then start to think about how that's impacting the decisions that you're making. It's a super fascinating thought exercise. And perhaps think about if there's a different place. Like I would say that most people probably, if you thought about it, the top answer that people will say is I get information from my peers. It's what they hear. But then the thing is, where do your peers get the information? It leads us back to the same place. And so my point of view on this has been very clear for the past 2 years. It'll continue to be this way. More technology is almost never the answer. Better strategy is, better talent is. So I'll leave it at that and see if any people have any questions. We'd love to dive a little bit deeper if people are thinking about this. Maybe someone could come on and talk about where they get their information. We can go through that.
Yeah, I think let me know, guys, if you want to come on and talk about it. Adam brought up a really interesting point, and I feel like it's worth bringing you on, Adam, to just share this live. I thought it was a great share, so more of a comment, but why don't you
Yeah.
share what you just dropped in the chat, Adam? I swear I'm unmuting you.
Hi, sorry, I was getting my camera and light going.
All
Sorry.
good, all
What's up,
good.
Adam?
Yeah. Hi. Now let me get. There goes my light. Of course. Okay. I was gonna make a point. I put it in the chat here. So my company gets referenced by analyst firms several times a year. We work in the defense space. They mention us as an account or an antenna manufacturing company, that's growing X amount, per year in these different markets, and they compare us to other vendors in the market. I've never once had anyone reach out to me to verify the information. I don't think anyone at our company has ever had anyone reach out to us. I'm the VP of marketing. I should be the first touch for them to come to if they're going to talk to us. If they came to the CEO, he would, refer them to me. We've never once been reached out to, so it makes me not trust what these reports say that much after seeing that, because we're listed in these things every year, multiple times a year, and I've never had anyone reach out to verify the veracity of the information included in the report.
Totally, because it's pay to play.
Yeah.
The second thing is you're not alone in people not like necessarily trusting this information, at least not trusting it the most. I'll put it that way. There's been multiple polls that have gone out on LinkedIn with thousands of responses of what do you trust the most? Peers is 100% the overwhelming winner, but then, and I think Gartner or analyst firms got 3%. And so and if you just do qualitative, I do a lot of qualitative assessment with people. I get this with CMOs, I get a similar response. It doesn't change the fact that I believe that's still how the information is happening between those two groups and getting it going into the market. And so it's not like, I'm not saying that everything these companies are saying is wrong. I'm not saying that everything is bad. Maybe it came off that way in my talk, but the point is that you need to be aware of where it's coming from, so that you can assess it, so that you can filter it, so that you can decide what parts of it that you want to use and which ones that you don't. Because I'm not sure that a lot of marketers go through that exercise. I started doing it in 2018. The reason being is because the marketing that I was doing was working so well, and all of the reports that I was seeing told me to do completely different stuff. And so then I started looking at it, and I was like, why would I stop doing why are all these things working for me and none of these vendors or analyst firms are telling anybody to do these things? And that one was super interesting. There was only two reasons in my view. One, the technology hadn't caught up enough in order to actually support Facebook ads. So no vendors push Facebook ads. No analyst firms push Facebook ads. They would rather push display ads because it was the only place that they could target in 2017, 2018. So that was one. And I don't remember what the other one was, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, as a potential user of a report, these things cost several $1,000s to buy. And so I've never wanted to actually spend money on a report because I didn't trust the information that I would get out of it based on never being vetted when our information is included in reports in the industry. So that's kind of where I was coming at it, and why I put my my comment into the chat earlier.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, that's no real question. Just
it's awesome. It's a super relevant comment. I appreciate you coming on and talking through that. It's awesome.
Of course. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. No, I thought it was worth you sharing out loud. Our good friend Omar is happy to come on and talk a little bit about where he gets some of his information in direct response to your call out. So I'm going to bring you on, Omar.
Can always count on you, Omar.
I know. Let's chat it out.
Good to see you guys. Yeah, and so the question is just getting information in terms of where I'm going to spend my marketing dollars and strategy, correct? Because it cut out on my earphone, cut out just for a second on that. Is that
totally
correct,
so?
right?
It's just thinking through where are the places that you get information to drive your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so unfortunately, there was a time where I was able to get it from vendors, but I've just realized that everybody says what you want to hear usually, and a lot of times when I cross-reference to see what a vendor is telling me between that and what's actually real, there's usually a huge disconnect. And again, for everyone's I guess for context, we're a SaaS company that sells to small businesses, specifically private medical practices. So a lot of times, and this is very anecdotal, I have to reach out to other peers just to see what they're seeing in their marketing campaigns, just to confirm what I've heard from like a vendor. And then a lot of times, for example, just recently, I won't mention who it is, but there was a vendor that was trying to sell me specific MarTech to reach physicians. And they're like, we know that this type of physician, this specialty, these are the places where they spend their most time, right? And so I was like, okay.
What were they? What were the places, if you don't mind me asking? I'd be interested to hear what they said.
It was one was Sermo. The other one was some obscure like journal websites and publication, and then the third place, I can't remember what the third place was because it was on a call. So I just knew that was BS. But I went ahead and reached out on LinkedIn to 3 different physicians who are in that specialty. I'm like, do you go to any of these? And all of them were like, no, we don't even know what that is. And I know that's very anecdotal, but if it's like something common, like for example, if they said like a lot of physicians spend their time on Twitter, if I ask those same 3 people, they might say, yeah, a lot of our peers go there. I don't spend time there, et cetera. But it was just a flat out like, no, I don't even know what those things are. Right. And so I feel like as a marketer, I have to do extra work, because if I'm going to invest in something, like I have to see some results. Because if, as we all know, like you invest in something, it doesn't work. What does a MarTech vendor come back and say? Oh, it's because of the creative and you need to spend more money. Okay, great. Let's spend more money and then spend even more money on creative. And then like 6 to 9 months later, it just doesn't seem to work, you know?
So it's like, it's thinking about where you get it. Because if I study MarTech vendors deeply. The things that I know about them is that they need to attach to a metric that you can move easily and predictably, which almost by design means that it's a vanity metric.
Exactly.
So they attach their success metric to a vanity metric. They can sometimes set up attribution to favor certain things or take credit for certain things that help them put in, especially on influenced revenue is the number one place where that happens. And then, so you have that where basically, my belief is that it's truly biased. There's some good stuff in there, but truly biased. And then you have analyst firms that haven't executed marketing in forever. I don't even think they don't actually execute anything, and they're giving you advice on how to run demand.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I feel that if you're not careful about this, you fall under the illusion that to actually see results, it's going to take longer than it should, and you have to spend a lot of money, you know? And so I don't think it's surprising that a lot of times marketing leaders, what is it, like the average CMO spends like 18 months on the job, because I think the first 12 months they spend a lot of money on these kind of things. And like 12 months in, it's like there are barely any results to show for. The brand hasn't been built, and you spent a crap load of money, you know?
And truly, my belief is that it's because you get the information from biased source that drives the wrong strategy decisions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, you kind of illuminated this and opened my eyes to this a couple of years ago on the show when you mentioned that a lot of these companies that run these reports, like Speed to Lead and everything, they're companies that are actually selling you that technology, right? But through third party.
Yeah, it was an SDR firm on that one, but
yeah, it was SDR. Sure. Yeah, exactly. So
cool, man.
Yeah.
All right, the Q&A is heating up, so I got a lineup here. Calvin, David,
Omar, we'll hopefully see you back later in the episode for another question. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, thanks, guys.
Oh yeah.
I actually came here for questions. I'll leave the questions more. You asked where did I get my marketing info? I originally thought it was like, well, I got unfortunately I went and got an MBA, so I was biased, but with a marketing slant. But I think you're asking about the actual research is what I heard, and I agree with Adam. Particularly on LinkedIn, I'm in the oil and gas, particularly drilling services, and there's so many bogus reports out there purporting to know my industry, and they come up with these astronomical numbers, and they want $4 or $5 grand for a report. So there's a lot of scams out there. There's one good, I guess, reputable outfit called Spears Research I use, but I'm B2B, of course, but my market's 1,500 global drilling rigs. So it's not like I need a whole lot of research to tell me where I need to go. And our industry is fairly conservative. They don't like to share a lot. So my marketing is straight with the client. That's the only way I can figure out what I need to do.
Yeah. What about if you strip out more on the, like, who are we targeting? How big is the market? How fast is the market growing? If you strip out that, and it's more so on the execution, like you're getting information on whether you're going to send emails, whether you're going to use intent data, whether you're going to buy a bunch of software, somewhere that information's coming from. Where's that coming from?
Well, I'm an early stage startup, and then Megan saw my original question. So I'm not near as sophisticated. I'm a bit of a kindergartner when I listen to you guys talk, and half the acronyms I don't understand, but when I do catch a word, I love it. And that's why I'm here.
You'll get them soon. Appreciate having you on here.
We'll bring you back later, Calvin, for your other questions. So you'll be a boomerang question asker. Wait for it. David, we'll bring you on to keep this particular topic going. I know you had some comments to share.
Yes, hi. So
welcome back, by the way. Haven't seen you in a little while. Great to have you here.
He's been in France.
Oh, how lovely.
I spent August in France. Yes, thank you very much. And I'm so glad I came back for this episode because, Chris, you're on fire and everything you're saying is absolutely the truth. And that'll probably cost me something somewhere down the line to say that, but it's true. I did want to differentiate one thing, though. So there's a lot of truth to what you're saying about the somewhat circular reasoning that goes into making what goes into a magic quadrant, right? the vendor talks to the analyst talks to the vendor talks to the customers, the analyst talks to the customers, and so forth. So this, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater completely, or keep some of the bathwater, or preserve the baby, or something. I don't know exactly, but the idea there is also research that goes into how buyers buy. And I find that research to be really helpful to me. The technology changes, the issues are perennial. So, and the buying patterns and the way that different teams and different size organizations buy in different ways commensurate to the level of investment and risk that the purchase represents. So there are some great analysts doing some good research on the way different types of buyers buy. And that's very helpful. I don't have to believe it wholeheartedly. I just kind of run it through the filter of my experience. Does it resonate? Does that seem reasonable? Does that hold truth with what my experience of the world is, right? And I can have my eyes open to ideas that I hadn't thought of, and that's important too. And indeed also magic quadrants, faulted as they might be, do help define a category. And that can help me in my shopping expedition, right? I'm like, when there are 8,000 pieces of MarTech out there, we have to believe that not everything is appropriate for the solution we're trying to fix, right? So then what categories are good? And just even being able to sort out what the categories are a little bit is a big help. So totally agree. A lot of the vendors sought information about metrics and everything you were saying before. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But
yeah,
really love that I came back to this because you were on fire just now, man.
But David, you're using your brain and common sense and not following the information blindly, right? So
and that's really the point here. I agree that packaging up the category in a certain way is helpful. I also believe that very few people weight that very high in their decisions. I truly believe they ask their peers, and oftentimes the peers just happen to correlate with the quadrant, not the other way around. And then your note on how people buy things, it's really interesting. I'd like to debate this one with you for a minute because I've read some of those reports too. I think that some of the things in there are really interesting. I remember back in 2016, 17, 18, somewhere in that time frame, that the big thing that Gartner was talking about was buyer enablement, which I thought was super smart. Because I started to lean into that, and now I enable buyers to do all the research on their own so that they come to us ready to buy. I just don't see a lot of I don't see a lot of companies that would be our customer, or B2B companies, product-based companies, doing that actually. And then I read one of their reports recently about how people buy things, and it was all about buying groups. And as I was reading it, it almost felt overblown, specifically to drive a message of ABM. We have these huge buying groups. We need to make sure that we're marketing to all these different stakeholders. We need to get all these stakeholders on our website before we can cold call them or we get an MQA. I thought that one was interesting because I always read it through a lens of skepticism, and so when I see things that are good, they're good. But when I'm seeing things that clearly seem biased or for a reason, because I just don't. In practice, we execute demand for 35 companies. You do not need a fucking buying group to all be on your website in order to sell a product. But there is some good stuff in there. I think it's really interesting when you think about how people buy things. I'm always fascinated that people don't talk about the podcast, how much organic social matters. I never see that come up in analyst reports. I'd be curious why you think that is.
Well, you find your favorite analyst and you kind of stick with him or her, right? So because they seem to represent a type of reality. So I have one or two of my favorite analysts, and I'm lucky that sometimes they publish things on LinkedIn, so I get to see some of the benefit of their research without having to pay, I don't know, $60,000 it is, a year. And I'll be happy to drop some names in the chat here if people are interested. It's all about getting ideas from places. So it's just another source. But your point is right on, right? Does it fit your experience of the world? If not, then maybe it's not appropriate. Maybe there are analysts who are better for your market than some that you might be reading. I'll name Gartner just here, right? They are rather famously known for providing research for very large organizations. And it's almost like a very different buying process. There are many, many things that are similar, but the selling process is completely different. The dynamics are different, the time frames and so forth. It may not change the marketing so much, but it changes the sales. And I'm probably going to get myself into trouble just even having said that. But
You're good.
That's what we have. A single account rep has one account. That's it. One account. Worldwide, maybe, but just even national. For that one product is one account rep for that one account, right? That's it. That's his total addressable market for the sales rep is one account, because it's such a complex buying cycle. And so it's a different kind of bag of bananas than much of the stuff that you and I and most of the people here are marketing. Anyway, I'll get out of the way so that the next person can move in. But thank you, and I'm so glad to be back. And,
Appreciate you.
To hit this hot topic.
Great to have you back, David. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Always appreciate your point of view. All right, we got more questions on this, so let's lean in and keep going.
Cool.
I liked where you were going with this, Nick. You're up next.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Nick.
This is my first Demand Gen Live. Chris, I feel like we had a conversation a couple weeks ago.
I was in Mexico. We were talking in the DM.
Yes. Yeah. So this is an interesting topic because I work for a big company, and I can tell you straight up, like, analyst reports and MarTech vendor information holds quite a bit of weight inside of our organization.
I'm well aware, yes.
So imagine I am the CMO. Like, what's that conversation look like if you're trying to reframe, how organizations should get their information? It's a loaded question.
That's a tall order, my friend. So there's, I'll throw out some options. I don't know if any of these are going to play. I definitely do not have experience trying to move a 20,000 employee company from listening to these people to using a different source. But if I was, here are some of the things that I would try. I would do deep buyer research. I would do my own primary market research across the entire market. I would understand deeply those people. I would have way better relevant data about where they spend their time, where they're buying things, how they want to buy, what that process is, who needs to be involved, what they consider, all of that information. And then I would put that together, and that would drive my strategy. This is what we need to get to as marketers. We need to get to a place where we understand our customers so well that we don't need these other sources, that the customer insights drive the strategy. And so that's really the only option in this situation. And even that, it pains me to say this, but even that may not work. But that's the way, is customer information. The second thing, and it's an interesting thing as very large companies think about these things, big, large companies typically are slowing growth, growing inorganically through acquisitions and things like that. And it's like, maybe it's time to change something up. Maybe it's time to do something different than all of our major big competitor companies that are all big and slow. And so those are some of the options, but I would look at either customer information, and I would also look at like, what are all the things that could go right if we did things differently than what everyone else is doing? What would you do? It'd be interesting to know what you think.
Well, it's at our company, product management and pricing, for example, do quite a bit of customer research, and historically they've been siloed off. They've been separate. They were separate functions. I would actually bring them together with product marketing and brand, because it's all marketing for the most part. Like, if you think about the fundamentals, you talk a lot about the fundamentals. Bring the fundamentals together. Don't separate the fundamentals. I think that's like the first thing. And then I think a lot of the customer research and knowledge would get actually better ingrained into the marketing execution. So a lot of those separations do a lot of the setup and the strategy build.
Looks like we might have lost you there for a minute, Nick.
But ultimate strategy, Oh, can you hear me?
We lost you there for a minute. It's all good.
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, bring the silos together. And then I think naturally the buyer research would take hold. It's separate today. That's the truth.
This was a good hypothetical, though.
Yeah. It's a good thought experiment.
That's a good first question for Demand Gen Live, Nick. That was a tough one.
Good to have you here. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on. Kelvin has a good one also related to this. And then we can decide to take a left turn to answer more questions, or you may want to meander back to the agenda. But Kelvin, go ahead.
Kelvin, you're in.
Live.
Hey, Chris. Long time listener, first time caller here.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm curious regarding analysts. I'm thinking of Forrester in particular. They have other services. So for example, you could pay them to like speak at your webinar or at your event. Another thing that they do, which I've done at a previous company, was creating what they're calling the total economic impact report, like essentially an ROI report. Like, to talk to your customers, they come up with some formula and they say, this software delivers X, Y, Z.
Find me one B2B buyer that believes those bullshit ROI reports. I see them all the time. Nobody believes that stuff. Sorry, but go ahead. I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, all good. Yeah, and then the other example would be, they're essentially like giving you license for a period of time to like syndicate your report that you can then use for lead gen. So yeah, I'm just curious about your thoughts on those other type of services.
So I don't know a lot of these services all that well. What I'm talking about specifically, and the only real like thing that I want to make people aware of here, is that that's where the information is coming from into the market, and that's what a majority of B2B marketers are listening to drive their strategy. And I'm encouraging people to look for alternative sources of information, because I think they're getting the wrong information. When we look at other things that those firms provide, I understand that some people find a lot of value in their advisory into how to position their product in the market and how to do some of those things. That's awesome. So if people find value in those things, I would encourage them to keep doing them. When we think about the reports and things like that, my belief on this is that at this point, just B2B buyers don't believe that stuff anymore. They like, I've looked at them for products that I want to use, and I'm like, oh, if I buy this product, I'll get 156% ROI in 6 months, and it just like doesn't feel just doesn't feel right, doesn't feel correct. And then syndicating it to run LinkedIn ads to get leads. Like, I think most people on here know my position on LinkedIn lead gen. Like, you're going to take that report, you're going to collect a lot of leads, you're going to hit vanity metrics none of those people are going to buy. And so just like syndicating a report to run lead gen is also like not my favorite move if I was going to do them, which is something that why don't we just go right into that if we want, Megan. There's a topic that I was going to cover some of this stuff on.
Let's do it. Jump in.
Yeah, and so the topic here is you don't need more budget. I hear this a ton from CMOs, both some that we work with and a bunch that we don't. And the answer is you don't need more budget. You need to make your existing budget work way harder. The way that you make existing budget work way harder is you start making hard choices about what not to do. So some of the things that I would choose not to do is I would definitely not syndicate that report, right? Like, that's probably going to be $50,000 or more. And so when we get into these topics, what I'm trying to encourage people to think about here is that there are a ton of line items on your budget that are not providing anywhere near enough value in order to justify keep doing them. But in order to stop doing them, you might need to let someone go. You might need to figure out when that technology contract is done. You might need to give up like 500 leads that don't close. And so when you start looking at these things, and I do this analysis with plenty of companies, there are like, I'm going to just call it how I see it right here. Probably 60% of revenue gets driven through word of mouth from a marketing standpoint. B2B vendors have no idea. They think it's all coming from their organic search, SEO work that they're doing, or all the other stuff that they're doing. It's literally just coming from word of mouth in the market. If they stopped doing all of the marketing, they would still get 60%. Then a small percentage, 10, 15% is going to be coming from all of their performance marketing, lead gen, Google ads, content syndication, LinkedIn ads, whatever other things that they're running in lead gen, review sites, where all their program budget goes. So they spend all of their money to get 15% of the actual revenue. And then you have 25% left over that's coming from other channels and sources. And so when you think about that, if you actually looked and you're like, oh, we spend all of this money in order to get 15% of our revenue, but it's $2.5 million to get 400K ARR. If we look at it that way, maybe we don't need more budget. Maybe we just need to stop wasting $2.5 million this way and just re-spend it. And so that's the easiest way that I can say it. I'm actually not sure that I have too much more to say on this topic, but when I hear a CMO, especially ones at companies that are high growth, that I know that they have a $5 or a $6 or a $10 million a year marketing budget, and they say, I need more budget, it's not true. You got 60 marketers on your team. You waste hundreds of thousands of dollars per month on programs that are not doing anything for you. You recoup all of those things back. You got minimum like 20%, but probably more of your budget that you can go and redeploy to things that work way better. And that's where you go out and you start a podcast, where you do the events, where you start running proper Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn ads, where you put together a community. All the things that marketing teams don't do right now because we don't have any budget. While they spend all their money on outdated tactics that are not driving ROI, and they just refuse to scrutinize the ROI of those activities. So trying to help people understand that's a major tip for CMOs that have a question or have something going through their head of, I need more budget. And it should be the other thing that you need to think about is if your marketing is really working and you need more budget. If the marketing's really working, getting more budget, especially in a high growth SaaS company, should be no issue. Put together a business case, show how much ROI it's going to have. Say if we spend $1 million more, we're going to end up getting whatever, another $1 million in revenue or $3 million in pipeline, or however your model works out. And putting that business case together, almost every CMO should get that money in a high growth company. The problem is that the data doesn't support the business case. So, and if the data doesn't support the business case, which is what normally happens, and that means that your request for additional budget is getting rejected or denied, that means that you need to go back and look at your existing budget and find all of the holes, which there are a lot of, all the places where money gets wasted, recoup that, spend it differently, get to a place where you can put that business case together, and then you go and get more budget. When you need more budget, it's when you can put your foot on the gas and you know that you're going to get 3 to 5x pipeline minimum out of the spend.
To put a cherry on top of this topic, Kai asked top 3 marketing activities that 80% of businesses don't do but should. 1, 2, 3. What are they, Chris?
A podcast, proper Facebook and Instagram ads, proper being not lead gen, not conversion based, good targeting, adequate spend, appropriate creative, good volume. Almost no company does what I just said except for the companies that work with us. So proper Facebook and Instagram ads. And then the third one that I would say is LinkedIn organic. Those are the 3 right now.
Solid answer. I love it. We have some other questions from earlier. Can we go back to AMA?
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
All right, Calvin, you've been very patient and you had 2 really good questions. So come on and you can ask both one at a time.
Okay. Thank you, Megan. So as I mentioned, I'm oil and gas, early stage pre-revenue startup. We're in AI, computer vision. So we got a pretty strong tech story. We're going to a fundraise pretty soon. I love you guys. Can't afford you guys. So I want to tell the investors I need to get you guys. So it's like, how do I, there's not so much an elevator pitch, but it's more like a paragraph or 2 in my business plan that the investors see and why I need to get Refined Labs. Second question. Should I go to the second question?
We'll cover that one first. The right. Truthful, honest answer is that it's too early for us. So,
I know it's too early for you. Is that what you meant, Chris?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I understood your question correctly, but my understanding was hey, how can we pitch to get so that our investors know that we want to work together? And honestly, company needs to be post product market fit to be ready to work with us, which is probably going to be some time. So the recommendation at your stage, there's plenty of stuff that you can take off of this podcast, or you can come in here every single week and ask strategy questions and then go and execute those. And so that would be my recommendation at this stage, if I understood your question correctly.
I am listening as much as I can. Our mission is we're going to have a camera on every rig. And so we're going to need to scale very quickly. And once we have, let's say, an Exxon or a Shell backing us, I need to move fast. And so that's why I am saying I've come to you quicker than maybe you think I could or should.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to, let's say I'm post revenue. What do I say?
To reframe your question, Calvin, I think what you're trying to understand is, based on all of the strategies that we talk about today, what do I need to tell my investors in my company of what we should be doing now at our stage for a marketing strategy in order to be successful and get to 10 million ARR, right? And then at that point, how does our strategy go? I think that's really where you're going with the question. And so maybe summarizing based on his current stage and state of the company, what are the right set of activities to be focusing on? And then what's the next milestone where you should reevaluate that and start to implement an updated strategy?
Thank you.
Thank you. So the strategy at this stage is marketing with content directly targeted at buyers in the places that they pay attention. For you, it should be super easy. You probably have a pretty narrow account list. You probably know the people in those companies. When we're talking about marketing, we're talking about content that is driven through education to inform buyers, create affinity, have people understand where the category is going, start to buy into that movement, not try and convert someone into a lead so your sales team can try and convert them into a opportunity. And so that's the long and short of the
Nice.
of the strategy. The things that most B2B companies do right now is they do lead gen in places where people don't pay attention. And I'm telling people to do content driven marketing in the places where people actually are.
No, you summed it up. I just got a model there. Buy into the movement. That's perfect, Chris.
Yeah, that's it's an easy way to explain it. I think people would get this straight away. It's like we're doing category marketing. We're getting people on board with where the world is going, where we see the vision of where the world is going because of our category, right? That works for Refine Labs. It could work for you. It could work for anyone. I'm not out here marketing our product. I'm just telling people that B2B marketing is rapidly changing and you're going to get left behind if you don't start making changes. And so you need to figure out what that message is for your buyer.
Okay, and I'll just quickly I know you're on a time thing. So the second question
we can go all night.
As the CEO, sorry. So I think I know marketing, but I'm definitely old school, but I know enough that's why I'm here. I need a marketing ops person. You had one of your podcasts. I'm trying to go back to your ones. Anyway, you brought it up about having a sort of gun for hire marketing ops person for an early stage startup. Can you give a little more description about where I'm at and how I could use that in a effective way with everything you're preaching with respect to how to market?
Yeah, that might have actually been Dave Gerhardt that said that on our podcast, not me. It doesn't sound like what I would say, but it sounds like what he would say. It's totally cool. The thing that you should be aware of is that the marketing ops landscape is incredibly competitive right now from a hiring standpoint, along with a lot of other marketing functions. Okay. And so it's hard to get that role. And so there's a couple of things to think about. One is it actually a marketing ops role, or should we be looking at a rev ops role that looks across the entire cycle? That's one thing to think about. And then it's the order of when they're being hired. But the point of that role, you have clean data, the tech is in place, you can make better decisions off of that, you can accurately forecast, project ROI, things like that. That's what you're trying to get out of that role. And so the point of Dave mentioning it to do it early stage is because you can't go back and get data that you don't have.
All right, and you said that instead of marketing ops, what was the title?
Revenue operations we'll look at. It's basically it's a different way of looking at marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops. Looking across the entire revenue cycle. It's interesting, actually. I find almost all of the value in revenue operations is about looking at it across the entire view. Right? So one person, it doesn't have to be one person, but I'm just using it for the example, one person that's looking at how lead source impacts churn.
Okay, nice.
Right? Like that's an example. The thing that companies do is they set up a revenue operations department and then they just hire marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, and silo it again.
I gotcha.
Thanks. And so, that's good.
And just to chime in here, Calvin, you're at a very early stage. And I think just to go back to your original question, I think that you need to, it might even be a little too early to be even worrying about marketing ops right now.
Yeah, close some deals.
Yeah, I think like really what you need to lean into is you need to talk to buyers of your product and understand how they make decisions, what their pain points are, where they go to get information. So deep customer research. Then you need to focus on content development. How can I create content that they will consume after I've asked them what's interesting to them and where they go to consume that, right? And then content distribution. And you can probably do all of this with very little budget. You just need time and people to talk to these people, make content, and put that content in front of them. You should be over-indexing everything on that right now. Once you start to make sales and you have like a repeatable process, then you can start to think about marketing ops and other more sophisticated things. But you gotta stick to the basics from where you're at, is my view.
Thanks,
I'm with
guys. You. Perfect.
Great. Good to see you, Calvin.
Okay, Mike. You've been very patient. You had a question earlier on that was a little different. So if you want to just refresh your memory, I'll bring you on to ask your question live, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I can't stop thinking about the term bag of bananas.
Same. David always has good ones.
So Yeah, my question is, so, the first comment, and I saw it just on the analyst discussion, I saw Sarah's note, and that was kind of on the mark. In my industry, we don't get marketing advice from analysts, but we use analysts to influence our prospects and customers. Sarah mentioned the Magic Quadrant from Gartner, the Wave from Forrester. If you're in the upper right hand of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, there's no doubt it's helpful, especially in the IT space. Customers do get influenced by Gartner, and you can say no, they don't, all you want, but that's not correct. And so, in my business, we're working with analysts, and someone else pointed out it costs money because usually you want to have a subscription with them to get time with them. And then they're going to be more friendly towards you, but trying to influence analysts to write about us, to rank us well in the reports and that sort of thing. And that's just kind of one of the realities. And in the enterprise IT space, customers do pay attention to that. So I'll just leave it there. I think that's what Kelvin was talking about as well in his.
I 100% get that, which works out perfectly if you're in the top right-hand corner of the quadrant.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out very well if you're not. And so for a majority of companies, and I've worked at these companies before, where if Gartner had a quadrant for our product, you'd have big enterprise gorilla at the top right. You'd have all of the challenger brands and the high growth SaaS companies and those in the middle performers, probably lower on market penetration, and that's not going to help you, right? So most of the listeners to this podcast,
sometimes you don't have a choice. I mean, they'll tell you, you are included. You can either respond to our questionnaire or not, but you're going to be in it, right?
Exactly.
So then your strategy is, I either need to figure out how to get out of it, or I need to do as well as I can.
Yeah, you most likely every company should do as well as they can. I don't think that it hurts you to be in that position. It's probably better to be there than to be nowhere. But for all of those companies listening that are in that position, being in that part of the quadrant's not going to get you to the top. What you need to do is you need to be smarter than the company at the top. And most of the companies at the top are really stupid about how they spend their money because they spend most of their time focused on analyst firms and things like that instead of buyers.
Yeah.
And so what you can do is you can take advantage of that reality. You can start marketing directly to buyers. You can build a community. You can have a podcast. You can create a movement. And what I'm finding when I survey B2B buyers, when I just look at what's happening in the market, I know that B2B buyers trust their peers a lot. I know that if there was a quadrant for our business right now, we would not be in the quadrant. We would not be a top person in the quadrant. But when what's going on in the market and what people are saying in the market, I get comments all the time where the people that never work with us say we're the best firm that exists for what we're doing right now. And so there's other angles that I'm encouraging people to think about. It's awesome if you're the top right quadrant. You should milk that for as much as you can. But for the companies that are in the top right quadrant as well, you should be building other channels. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't argue with you. I mean, it's just some companies happen to be in an industry where they don't have a choice, and
yeah. And the thing is,
in some industries, like IT, enterprise IT in particular, they do digest and respond a lot to what the analysts have to say.
How long do you think this is going to go on for?
I don't know. I'll give you an example. In our industry, there's a technology called Sd-Wan, and that is a new way of connecting remote branch offices into a network together, right? So imagine CVS, they got to connect all their branches, or a bank. Gartner went out and combined that connectivity with security and created a new term called SASE, Secure Access. I can't remember the exact acronym. It's not exactly my industry, but that has now become the default term, and everyone is in that space is using SASE, and they've created this huge movement. So that was in the last kind of year and a half. So they're still pretty relevant. Again, I'll say, especially in the IT enterprise space. So, but I agree.
Awesome.
I mean, look, it's just one channel that you have to deal with, right? And influence if it is relevant to your business. So on to my question. So you talked about program dollars, importance of spending on program, and I'm kind of particularly interested in content distribution, investment in content distribution across the different channels. And one thing we're doing, I don't know if it's right or not, but we're trying it based on some of the things I've heard here is, we're doing more on LinkedIn organic and trying to get to a regular cadence. We're not doing a podcast for various reasons. I don't think it's a good fit for our industry. We are doing more LinkedIn, and we're seeing good success with that. We also do paid social. We also do paid search. So one question I wonder about, and with paid social, we're actually starting to try and send them the non-gated content just to kind of get exposure, brand awareness, try and get a toehold in their brain. And we do filter on job title, size of company. For us, it's below 5 billion, above 100 million, below 20,000 employees, above 100 employees. So I have a question on the balance between LinkedIn organic and paid LinkedIn or paid social, and what you think there. And then when I look at our marketing attribution system, and I know what you think of market attribution systems, and I look at sort of all of our inbounds, we have a report where we say, show me all the demo requests, show me all the contact us, and what is the first touch on those from the attribution system?
Organic or direct?
No, it's almost all paid search, SEM. No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. If I filter out direct, which is unknown, if I filter out organic web referral, and I just look at paid channels, paid SEM, paid social, I did include organic social, and what am I missing? SEM. If I just look at the paid channels, SEM
all going to go to SEM.
Yeah. So for me, that means all right, if I'm spending money on content distribution, I should spend the bulk of it on SEM. Whatever percentage of my budget is paid.
That's what attribution software will tell you. That's what most companies do. That's for sure.
Okay.
So your first question was on the balance. Let's cover one and then we'll get to the other. So your first question was on the balance between paid LinkedIn and organic LinkedIn. The answer is as much as possible on both channels, all in both ways. Okay. And so the reason that companies can't get there, right? I heard you say, we're trying to get into LinkedIn. We don't really have a cadence. We're trying to get there. Like, what resources need to be there? Do you need to go and get a different person that has experience putting out content? Do you need one of those things? If so, do you need to stop doing another thing in order to support that? When I look at these as a fellow marketing leader, I'm looking at my 2, 3, 4 activities that I want to push all my chips in. And so LinkedIn, both paid and organic, it's like as much as possible until the channel stops working. It's one of the best opportunities in B2B, and it has been for the past 3 or 4 years.
Okay. I think we're roughly doing that, with the only thing that the only knob I can turn is less on SEM.
Yeah.
In terms of my ad budget, I could dial down SEM and increase LinkedIn.
If you think about your ad budget, what % goes to SEM?
70%.
Yeah, normal that I see is about 80. So we're in the same line here. It's all about attribution. You're driving people to gated content right now.
Not always. No, I mean we're sending people a lot of times to blogs. We have the campaigns broken up like top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. I know what you think about funnel too, but for top of funnel, that category, we send them to blogs, we send them to solution pages, things like that, educational content. Middle funnel, it is typically gated, and then bottom of funnel, we're sending
product pages going for demos, stuff like that.
Yeah,
you're trying to
exactly.
convert
demo
to sales.
Requests, contact us, data
Yeah.
sheet, that kind of thing.
So this is the what I've been coining an attribution, the attribution facade. And so what happens is that attribution software, maybe you already have this perspective, but I'll help just get people up to speed. Attribution software is going to favor channels that are intent driven, that are direct response, that people are most likely getting that ad on a desktop computer. So all those three things match up to favoring review sites, SEO and SEM, and affiliate type of marketing on third-party websites. And those are the places that B2B companies still spend money because they look at it purely on attribution. The problem is, and this is the reason that I talk about a lot, where people are actually making decisions about what to buy are in the channels that I talk about. They're making decisions. They're deciding what their business priorities are, what to spec in, what are important features and functionality of the tools that they're going to buy, and they decide those things in communities, getting information on social, do podcasts otherwise, and then they end up in intent channels, and companies are just fighting over the buyers that don't have a preferred brand right now. So you might be the big company that is carried based on being in the quadrant, having the really strong brand. You're going to win a lot of that stuff.
We're the company in the lower left.
Yeah.
We're
So
clawing up the side of the quadrant.
If you're the company in the lower left, the recommendation truly is to pretty much stop spending on SEM altogether.
Okay.
And so that's what I would do if I were you. You might want to phase this down, but basically branded search, you're not going to beat a Grillo competitor outbidding them and outsmarting them with 70% of your budget going on to paid search. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, but we're not doing branded search. We're doing long tail terms like data center fabric networking, right? Because nobody knows about us as a data center fabric networking solution provider until, either, we have to find places to make them aware, we're an alternative. SEM is one of those.
It can be, but the problem is that SEM is dramatically overpriced and drives very low ROI for most B2B companies today because it's super competitive, it's mature, and people are making buying decisions in other places like the ones that I talk about. The other advantage of the places that I'm talking about is that, one, you can get massive reach for free putting out organic content, right? So I don't need to pay $4 a click on a long tail search to drive someone into a blog that exits right afterwards. I can go and get that stuff for free in the places where people are. So one, you get a ton of organic reach. The second thing is your competitors are definitely not marketing there. And so when you are in the lower part of the quadrant and you are competing against the big company, you need to think about how I make all of my marketing dollars works way harder than the dollars that I have, because my competitors have 20x the budget. And so I can't have the same mix that they have. I need to be smarter than them. I need to be 4 steps ahead of where they are. I need to be more agile. I need to be more customer focused. I need to be more progressive. And so that's an extreme recommendation. It may not be perfect for you, but that's honestly what I would do.
Okay. I mean, I don't agree it's all free. I'll just say that. I mean, yes, we can do work on LinkedIn, but it's only getting exposed to our followers, and if someone's engaging with us, in a meaningful way, making comments, right? Does it get exposed to their followers? Because I believe that algorithms changed. And then other places that our customers hang out, prospects hang out, are industry trade media outlets, right? Like Network World. We can get earned media coverage, but it's a lot easier for Cisco or Arista to get earned media coverage than it is for my company, Pluribus Networks. Right? So then what do we do? Well, we can pay for sponsored posts, right? We can pay to be posted on the front page of Network World in line with their editorial. That's a place where our customers hang out, but it's not free. So, I don't want to take all your time, but
so
we do talk to our customers and understand where they hang out, and only some places are free, and we don't have exposure to everybody that we would like to become a customer. So we have to pay for it in many cases.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this one, because where you told me about where people hang out versus where my belief is where they actually hang out, I think there's a gap there. I think that I bet they spend time in the places that you just mentioned, but there's other places that they spend a significant amount of time that you might not know about. The reason that I think this way is because I heard all the same stuff from the CEO and the CMO at the company that I worked in 2017. Physicians don't use Facebook. They're professionals. They don't do that. They don't use LinkedIn. What they do is they go to conferences. They look at these journals. They look at the American Association of Emergency Medicine Physicians website. And then I went out and talked to them and I looked what they were doing, and all of them spent time on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And so there was just a gap between what executives thought about what people did versus what they actually did. And I honestly don't know what it is for your buyer. I would just challenge you to look at that, because it might be different.
Fair enough.
Just
we are doing that, by the way. We are actually, my whole team, everyone's taking a group of customers, everybody on the team.
I love that. One of the best moves as a CMO, in my view. I love that, Mike.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
There's nothing wrong to pay for eyeballs until you can get them organically either. So there's also
I would prefer them for free.
Of course, but until you get the broader reach organically, I think a mix of paid and organic is.
And he's doing some of that with LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have two important anonymous questions that I'm going to slide in right now.
Okay.
You gotta love the anonymous one. So I'll be asking this on someone's behalf. So we've been running direct response lead gen campaigns on Facebook for the last year, and realized that we hadn't had much success after going through a similar split the funnel exercise that you talk about a lot on Demand Gen Live. We recently started running a playbook like the one you talk about, ungated educational content on Facebook. Some of the marketing leaders at my company are asking me why we're not generating more demos from the ad spend on Facebook. I'm committed to the long-term strategy of education and awareness on channels like Facebook, but I'm concerned that marketing leadership is too focused on the short-term demo volume, and they won't let me continue to use this approach. How do you recommend I navigate this situation?
This is hilarious. What's most hilarious about this question is, how do you go a year running Facebook lead gen and not realize that it doesn't work for a year? That's what's happening in a lot of companies that are running lead gen. Like people that are listening to this podcast right now, you're spending a significant amount of money on some ad channel. It could be LinkedIn ads, it could be content syndication, it could be somewhere that is a complete waste of money, and you just don't see it. So the first thing that I'm saying, and just trying to help people illuminate this is not uncommon. Companies run these strategies for years, and they see that they're getting $50 leads, and they never look at whether or not those leads close, and they just go about and do it. And so it's just so fascinating. We have all these companies talking about how data-driven they are, how much they obsess about attribution, how much they love these things, and then when they have the data right in front of them, they never look at it. So wild. So when we look at this about changing the strategy on the Facebook side to something that's ungated, you're definitely going to get less leads. You're not running a lead gen strategy anymore. You're running a demand strategy. You're going to get less leads. It's the reality. So if executives aren't bought into that, I would recommend, one, showing them the split the funnel analysis, showing them what the results of that were in terms of lead to win rate, customer acquisition cost per sales qualified opportunity relative to other things that you're doing. And I would just show them how bad it was. And so then the reason that you do that is because you want to go back to this. I know that we're not getting as many leads or as many whatever you want to call them, but you want me to go back to doing this, which has a customer acquisition cost payback period for advertising of 38 months. We spent money for a year. We got one customer. And so that's the process of moving people. The second thing to think about is that in order to do this stuff well, it takes talent. Like, I don't think people realize, they're like, yeah, we'll just run Facebook ads, stuff will work. Understanding customers, putting together great messaging, running creative appropriately, targeting really well, understanding how to optimize, using the insights from the creative to feed the next round. Like people think that it's just about buying an ad and putting something up there and that it'll work. There's so many mechanics to making paid social work that's different than SEM that most people have no understanding of, that don't respect. The most obvious one is people don't understand how important the creative is. The words and the pictures that you put inside of Facebook are the most important thing about whether or not you succeed. The only thing that's more important is targeting and pictures. And so the people that are asking the questions, like, we're running this strategy, we're like not seeing results or whatever that is, it's most likely because of the creative. And so in that situation, they probably haven't run more than 10, some companies probably not more than 3 versions of creative. The other thing to think about on the targeting side, this is a lot of advice here, but on the targeting side, if you're not using a tool of like metadata to target on Facebook, and it's B2B and it's not super wide like Monday.com or like something super horizontal, you're gonna struggle there. And so perhaps moving to either using a tool or moving to LinkedIn to get better targeting are both options for that as well. Those are some ideas.
Cool. One more anonymous question, and then we have Bob and Brandon with some great questions that we'll bring on right after this. And so this is continuing on the analyst firm theme that you kicked off the episode with. So you've talked a lot about how these analyst firms are going out of style, quote unquote. Do you think that a world will ever exist where it's solely word of mouth marketing?
It kind of gets into the next topic, so why don't we just move into that?
Let's do it. We'll come back to you, Bob and Brandon.
Yeah. So one more time on the question, like, is it just going to all move to word of mouth at some point?
Yeah, basically, like, are these going to will they go out of style? Will they die? And then
No.
is the future something completely different?
No. I believe that the level of trust and the amount of weight that buyers put on how they make decisions will continue to move in this direction as they have access to peers and people that they trust, that they believe are less biased or more objective or actually just unbiased relative to other sources. And so I believe that we're going to keep moving that way because B2B buyers have access to their peers in a ton of different ways, and they can ask these questions super easy and they just trust them more. So I see that moving that way. But the thing that we had on the topic here, and it's really interesting to think about, is how to trigger word of mouth. Because then, so I heard there was a post from Dave Gerhardt, but a ton of people talk about this, and they're like people are always like, we know that word of mouth's driving B2B buying decisions, but we can't control it. We have no control over it. It's like, and when you're in that situation, it's typically because you're thinking about word of mouth purely as a sales referral, like an affiliate. And there's so much more to word of mouth than somebody saying, you should buy that product right now. And so what I want people to think about, because what you actually want to do, and what basically our entire marketing strategy at Refine Labs and for a lot of the companies that we do work for is to be the seed that triggers the word of mouth conversation. To take a video about dark social, put it on LinkedIn, let a bunch of people consume that, so that they go back into their marketing team meeting the next day and they ask their CMO about it, or they go into Dave Gerhardt's group and they ask about Refine Labs, or they get people talking about the category, the company, the product. You can also use paid to do this. This is like pretty much our paid social strategy, is to give people information in these channels. And I'm not looking to get them as a lead. That's why there's no attribution. What I want them to do is I want them to have this information so that they go into a community or they go somewhere else and they ask a peer, do you use that tool? Have you considered this category? What have you thought about this company? Because that's where all the value is. And that's why you don't have attribution on these leads. And so it's a completely different way of thinking about it. Ever since 2017, when I did these buyer surveys and they said, before I ever want to talk to your sales rep, I want to talk to a colleague at another facility that uses your product. And when like 85, 90% of my buyers said that, I completely changed the marketing strategy. I wasn't running get a quote ads on Facebook ads anymore. I was running ads that delivered information that allowed people to consume it so that they would proactively go and ask, hey, I saw this clinical trial about this product at this company. I know this company, this hospital across the street uses this product. I'm going to go ask the director what their experience is. And so if you can think about your marketing strategy and how you can use things specifically in dark social in order to educate people, to create word of mouth, to be the trigger so that more people are talking about you. Gong's Super Bowl spot was an example of this. Way more people were talking about Gong just because they did that. Created a ton of word of mouth in the market. They get a lot of that already. And so, or you can do it like we do, which is way more like rolling thunder than a lightning strike. Just ongoing. Here it is. It's coming. We're talking about new stuff. And I wanted to get to one more topic, which is kind of parallel that I want people to think about, which is that a lot of companies, almost all B2B companies, talk about awareness. We need to get more awareness. We run our display ads for awareness. We're running top of funnel blog content for awareness. And what I want people to think about is that what you actually want is relevance, not awareness. I'm super aware of Salesforce. I'm super aware of a lot of B2B tech companies. The thing is that Salesforce is totally irrelevant to me. They never post content. I never see it. None of it resonates with me. None of it helps me. I get no value out of it. I know Salesforce. I use their tool. But what people really need to get to is relevance. The reason that people like Gong, the reason that people like what we do here at Refine Labs, the reason that a lot of people liked what Drift was doing back then, and I think we'll continue to like it now that Dave's back, the reason that people like those types of companies is because they have relevance. Not just showing your logo on a display ad everywhere, not just trying to get people to see your brand name. It's deeper than that. And so the way that you get that done, truly understanding people, giving them information that they come and seek out, that truly gives them value, that they want to share. And so kind of went in several different directions there, but I covered two topics there: how to trigger word of mouth, and also relevance is greater than awareness.
We got two great questions, one from Bob and one from Brandon. Let's jump back in. Bob, it's not a Demand Gen Live without a question from you.
Hello. So you already hit some of the topics, Chris, where I was asking if maybe you could dive a little bit deeper on your content strategy, particularly around Facebook. And, obviously I've been doing it for a year using a very small ad spend that I have, a few $1,000s a month. It has generated at this point 10 deals. So like the cost of acquisitions, like, a month. So that tells me on one component, like what we're doing is right, but I always struggle with.
Really awesome.
Oh, thanks. But it's such a small number because we're still waiting on the equity raise, right? To scale it. But the question I'm always struggling with is the content that I'm creating. Is it too product service oriented versus storytelling or more educational? Because we're so niche down, what we're doing with the teleoptometry space. And it's like, how do you present the problem without getting immediately to your service that solves the problem in the, in the ad and the messaging? So at some point, I would love to see you. I've never actually seen an example of your work. I mean, I would love to, and maybe you're giving away trade secrets then, but at some point I'd love to see a breakdown maybe of the content you do. We've done case studies. I've posted case studies that are more business oriented, but they're very simple. I kind of talk more about the problem and the service that we solve. And it's, so the CAC has been showing me that it's maybe the messaging's right and the content's right, but it's just the scale of it that, like, when it's like one closed deal a month, it doesn't seem like maybe it's right. And so I would even offer up my own ads for you to roast one day to say, oh, here's where you went wrong. I mean, I'm just giving you an idea maybe for possible content that others might find valuable, because that's the biggest thing I struggle with what you talk about is the content I'm creating the right type of content? And how do you, aside from measuring the cost of acquisition, is there some other way that it's resonating right?
Yeah. So even if that channel doesn't scale any further, which I doubt is the case, if you're in any channel and you're getting customers for 1 month CAC payback, you should keep doing it regardless of whether or not it can scale. Like that's the thing. Most companies struggle to get an 18-month CAC payback on their stuff. You're getting them for, what is that? 2-3% of what they're striving for, maybe 5% of what they're striving for. So that's really awesome that things are working. If you had more money, do you think you could scale it? Is it money the problem, or is it?
Yeah, I think it's money for sure, right? I mean, I don't even have a team.
Are the audiences big enough? Are you not hitting? Are you hitting frequency metrics? How's that stuff happening?
Pretty much a 2 on frequency every week. I mean, I change up the ad almost every week, and I hit the frequency on my targeting that I'm doing, and but I mean, I'm not even touching LinkedIn or any other social channels, and so it's just like, as you know, it's a lot of work. Just, I mean, I spend my nights doing this stuff, trying to come up with the cartoons I'm making, and it's a lot of work. So I think it's a scale of having more people do it, and also the distribution.
Yeah, I would keep that rolling, and I would start the teleoptometry podcast, or the modern teleoptometry podcast, or whatever you want to call it. I would get that moving, keep the Facebook stuff rolling. Perhaps you start recording this video podcast. Some of your guests are talking about some really good stuff, and that video becomes the content that you put into Facebook ads.
I've struggled with that too. So I started a podcast last year. I've done 10 episodes, right? Or 9 episodes. So I mean, I've been really, really inconsistent with month gaps in between, and
most people are.
It's a lot of work, right? The video editing alone, it's so with no process, and this is not what I do, right? I'm on the sales side, obviously. So I have been doing the podcast. The one thing I struggled with putting some of that content on Facebook is, I remember a while back, and you were totally right, I have like one high production value video that was done, and everything else I have is low production value Zoom webinars that I've recorded and tried to chop up, and they did not perform at all on Facebook, right? And so you called that one out the gate. I tried like 2, and they just didn't perform. So I mean, do you think is it a matter of just the production quality, or is it the content? Because I did record one recently that was on a very hot topic within our space about the laws around it. There's a lot of animosity about what we do. So I've specifically recorded this with a legal expert, and I was going to put it on Facebook, but I'm like, this is the problem. I'm always second guessing my marketing content.
So the short answer is I'm not sure. They're like testing to try and figure this out. Could have been that the title bar wasn't good, right? So some of the nuances that I see in LinkedIn organic would play exactly the same in Facebook ads. The format of my LinkedIn videos originated from the Facebook ad format that I was doing in 2017 to emergency medicine physicians. The header bar on top, the captions on the bottom, it was by far the optimal like video distribution mechanism at that time on Facebook, and I just copied and pasted onto LinkedIn. And so when I'm posting on LinkedIn, if the title bar doesn't hit, it's the difference between getting 300 likes on a video and 800. Just with the 3 or 4 words that happen at the top. And so that's one potential thing. It could just be the video quality. You need to move that from Zoom to some level of like an HD webcam or something like that. Record it locally. Better video quality could help. It could be that just the content, the people didn't like the content. Could be that there's a lot of variables here, so you're going to have to go through some testing to figure it out. The easiest process here, and it may not be the right recommendation for you, but it is the right recommendation for people that are listening or want to do this, is that you need to find a channel where you can distribute this stuff organically to your audience, where your audience can tell you whether or not it works, and then you can move it to paid. And so a lot of people don't have that luxury, right? So then they basically need to use paid, and then when you're in paid, you're guessing, was it the header? Was it was it this? As opposed to, like, I can't wait till when we do this, but it hasn't been yet. Like, I can go back into the LinkedIn videos, sort, and look at every single video that I posted that has more than 800 likes, which is going to be like, I don't know, probably 10 to 20 videos. And then we could just run media on that to every single CMO in a certain demographic. Because it's already been validated that people love this topic. So those are some options on video.
Yeah, super appreciate your input as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. All right, Brandon, you dropped a question earlier. I'll bring you on to ask live. Good to have you on the show, Brandon.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, and Chris, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. So earlier in the show, you talked about you don't need more budget, right? Which I appreciate that, but I want to fight the other side of that battle is I also don't want less budget. Right? So about 18 months ago, well, first of all, I'm a CMO for a company. We're a B2B service company in Texas, and CEO about 18 months ago said, burn it down and start over because the marketing wasn't working. So took a huge budget, slashed it, took a content strategy approach, eliminated a ton of MarTech, and just started putting out content. So cost is way down, closed one, contract revenue under contract is way up. Everything you want to happen is happening. It's budget time, and the CFO says, well, Brandon doesn't need all that money anymore. Let's put it somewhere else. I'd kind of like to hire some people and invest in other things. And so how do I have this conversation, not only with the CEO, but with my CFO, and avoid a war in the conference room as a result?
Yeah. So this is 100% simple, can be 100% rooted in logical financial business data in order to make a case, a business case, to go and get more money, to scale up what you're doing, to drive growth of the company faster than any other way. So before that we get there, I just want to clarify a point here. Definitely we don't want less budget, but what I'm encouraging people to do when I say you don't need more budget is that what I find is that most marketing leaders struggle to make hard choices about what they need to do and what they don't need to do. So they end up doing a ton of things and they do them all mediocre, and they spread out budget and they spread out focus. So that's what I'm encouraging. But as we move into your question, on the business case side, you should be able to put in, how does most of the revenue that marketing is generating come through? Does it come through your website?
Yeah.
Website. Yeah, and so you should be able to look at all of the people that come through the website. Do you also have an outbound motion or some type of sales motion? Or is it all inbound?
Yeah, it's not quite a demo, but it's a meeting one-on-one, and pretty much your first job's free type deal. So.
Got it. Do you have salespeople that are doing some type of cold calling or prospecting on their own, or does all of the revenue come inbound through the website?
Well, the salespeople are technically, it's an engineering company, and the engineer is the salesperson, right? So when they come in the door, they're talking to the expert.
Yeah. So it's inbound.
Yeah,
is what I hear. Okay, so at that point, you should be able to look at all of the revenue that came through against all of the costs and calculate some level of customer acquisition cost. So on the marketing side, let's just do sake of round numbers, you got 100 customers in the past 12 months through marketing, and it cost you $5,000 per customer. But when you get those 100 customers, each of the customers pay you $250,000 for their lifetime. And so you're spending $5,000 to get a $250,000 customer, or whatever the numbers that you come out to do. And then you should be able to put together a business case on, if we put budget here and we put budget here, we should be able to get X amount more out, which would drive this many more customers. This is a lot easier, to be just direct and honest with you. This is a lot easier when companies have multiple go-to-market motions, because companies overspend on outbound and it's super inefficient. So I'm always going and I'm comparing it to outbound and just showing people how much better moving money to marketing would be to drive faster growth, to get more customers at lower customer acquisition costs. The fact that everything's coming through marketing for you right now needs to be, the business case is not moving more money this way to grow faster. You need to figure out, what are the things that I need? What are the projections that I can make based on that, in order, like, how much more can we get out of it? And then you need to go and execute there. So this is purely put together a plan, project business results out, and then go and execute and get them done.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think that's an easy sell to our CEO. He and we think alike. It's the CFO that says, "Man, we can all get bigger bonuses if Brandon doesn't need this much money." So,
oh man,
that's what I'm trying to preempt before we sit down for a budget meeting next month. So,
got it. Yeah, that's that's a tough scenario, because like the companies that we work usually don't have that challenge. It's like
That's fair.
It's top line matters. In this case, I'm guessing it's a profitable service-based business, right? So profitable service-based business, CFO is going to be managing that a little bit differently.
If your CEO is on,
I appreciate the insight.
I was going to say, if your CEO agrees with you, have him talk to the CFO. Influence through him.
That was that was the strategy coming in. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't overlooking something. So.
Well, great job. Sounds like you're doing a good job. So keep it up.
that was a great story, by the way. It's super interesting. So
yeah, thanks.
Cut all the budget, removed a bunch of marketing technology, built from the ground up using content, drove way more revenue at way lower CAC. Super interesting and super feasible for most companies. Nice. Man.
And I absolutely hate Facebook, but it works. And
love hearing that too.
I spent more than a decade in journalism before this job and railed against Facebook for all that time. And now I'm doing this, and I still hate Facebook, but I give them a bunch of money now.
I'll be honest with you. I don't love Facebook either. Their support is so annoying. There's so many things about that company that I don't like, but objectively, if you're thinking about where to spend your marketing budget, it's one of the best places that you can put money if you're running ads today. And other people, executives, make emotional decisions about whether or not Facebook works, or opinionated decisions. But when you actually just stack it up and you take out all the subjectivity, it really is probably the most effective marketing channel right now. Good to see you, Brandon. Thanks. I think we might have one more question before we wrap up here, but we have, extended episodes. We got quite a few people that are sticking with us for the long haul, which is awesome.
I know. Last week and this week, our AMA has been on fire. All right, Jenny, you can ask the closing question on tonight's Demand Gen Live. You're on.
Oh, what an honor. Can I say, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your content. I actually just got introduced to you about last week, actually. So I've just been digesting everything that you've had to say. And my question is, after I want to be able to start a LinkedIn group to be able to promote more of our peer-to-peer partnerships. Just for a bit of context, I work for a property real estate company. We've been running a podcast for about 2 years. And recently, one of our segments is speaking to partners. And I just want to be able to build more of the B2B strategy as opposed to trying to get a brand awareness. And so starting off with building a LinkedIn group, when you're starting it off, what's the best way to, I guess, create an effective LinkedIn group for, I don't know how to say this, but I think I don't know how to start a LinkedIn group, and people aren't going to want to join in initially, especially when it's a group of professionals. So how, what's the best way to approach this?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we should talk through before we talk about the LinkedIn group is a LinkedIn group even the thing that you should be doing? So let's talk through this. Let's talk through the strategy around it. So I didn't fully understand what you're trying to accomplish, but like, who do you want to be a part of the community or the group, and why?
Right. So I know that LinkedIn is probably where our ideal clients are at, and especially with our partners, like the mortgage brokers and the solicitors and all our peer groups, they are on LinkedIn. We've invited them onto our podcast, and through that, it's been a really good way to create a stronger partnership and also get referrals. So I think outside of that podcast, creating a space to be able to connect with more people, and we can all kind of help each other out with what our services are. I think that might be an effective way to also grow the peer group. But I think it's intimidating to start this LinkedIn group because it is a long-term plan to grow it over time. And so I don't know if people are going to want to join in initially. And if they are, how can I make it more of a valuable group for them to want to join, to be a part of?
Yeah, let's do this thing real quick. It's not going to be perfect data, but if everyone is on here, if you can use the reaction, could you just choose like an emoji if you use at least one LinkedIn group right now?
Not many people are going to say yes.
I see about, it looks like 4 or 5 out of 30. So 20%, that's actually more than I expected. That's an interesting data point. So there is a percentage of people that are using LinkedIn groups, which is good to know. You have a podcast going. What else do you have going specific to this buyer?
We run Google ads, and then we just kind of focus on building a strong brand image across our socials.
Are you doing anything just pure, just like LinkedIn marketing?
No, we don't do LinkedIn marketing. We do have an online course as well. So yeah, that's something that we also promote on the side.
So for me, I probably wouldn't go to a group. I'd probably look to figure out a better, more effective way to distribute the podcast audio to get a better growth loop, get more people listening there. I would consider, if I was going to go in the group route, potentially a Facebook group, depending on what type of mortgage lenders that you're using. I also can hear your accent, so it might be a little bit different in your part of the country than mine. But what I'm seeing in your part of the world, what I'm seeing right now is that Facebook groups are getting used a lot, and a lot more than LinkedIn groups. It might be different, like I said, in your part of the world.
Yeah.
Those are some things that I would think about, but I'm happy to talk through, because the principles and the things that you need, whether it's a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group or a Slack group or Discord, or it doesn't matter. The principles of what you need in order to have an effective community or group are pretty straightforward and tried and true. And so what you need is you need to have some type of movement or mission or something that the people that join want to be a part of. Ideally, you want to get that movement or a mission to a place at a level so high that people want to bet their career on that.
Right.
So that's one potential thing to think about. You need to provide massive value in some way. In this context, it's going to be professional advancement, education, networking, new opportunities, ways to make more money. You need to figure out what those people want, and then you need to create the place where mortgage lenders or whatever they're called in your context go, in order to the place where people go to get better, right? Like similar thing to what we're doing here, but you can think about what that would be for you, where people can find new jobs, make more money, different things like that. It doesn't have to be all of them, but it could be one. You put those two things together, and then you have and then you need an initial acquisition strategy to get people in there so that they can see the value, so they can tell all of their friends about it. Those are pretty much the three things. Then you need to deliver on an ongoing basis of content. So those are some ideas. If you did want to get the LinkedIn group started, those are the things that I would think about. It's a lot of thought going into, why would someone go on to LinkedIn and come to our group every time they log in? When you asked that question, even while I was thinking about it, I was like, that is really hard to do.
Yeah.
Out of all of the things that somebody could do, that they choose to go to your group, that means that you need to be providing an enormous amount of value, super differentiated, giving people things that they can't get anywhere else. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's actually a really good mindset to have about that. You go into it with the right mindset. You go in thinking, I need to do things that are really great for these people. I think it creates a lot of the right behaviors when you think about it that way. I think a lot of people, this is sort of off topic, but I think a lot of people underestimate and undervalue that. They like write their blogs and they expect people to just show up. They put content on LinkedIn. They just expect people are going to love it. And then you think on LinkedIn, there are 3 million people that post content every day. So out of all the things that people could look at, that they choose your content, that's a win. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I saw the LinkedIn groups as like an untapped opportunity, because even as we were testing it out, asking everyone, not many people use LinkedIn groups. I only just signed up this week just so I can see what other groups are doing.
Yeah.
So I think similar to how Facebook groups are, it kind of transformed into now our online forum for people to use. So I thought that's something that LinkedIn in the future will become. And so obviously being proactive, seeing the opportunity and starting that now would be great. But again, it is a harder strategy to follow through with, as opposed to just, making those sound bites and sharing that online.
And if you truly are thinking about it in a long-term view, then you should be able to do it. And if it doesn't get you the thing where people mess up in groups is that they want a group like this to deliver results in 90 days. That's when you mess up. If you're going into it with the right mindset, saying, hey, we're going to put together this group. Hopefully some people find it organically. We're going to put some content there. We're not going to invest a lot, but maybe in 2 or 3 years or in 18 months or in 12 months or whatever the time frame is, people start showing up. People start posting there and engaging and interacting, and then we own it.
Yeah.
Right. So even just building it and then doing minimal effort to maintain it and then seeing if you can get the spark. If you don't, that's an interesting way to think about it as well. And if you're going to go in that direction, I would also recommend trying to figure if you saying that the audience that you're going after spends time on LinkedIn, so much so that you want to build a LinkedIn group, you need to have a main feed organic strategy too.
Cool. I won't take up any more of your time, but I do appreciate all the content that you're putting out, and I'll definitely be back for these live events.
Thanks, Jenny. Great to see you. Good question. Good first question.
Thanks.
Good to have you tonight, Jenny. Man, this is the longest we've gone in a while.
I know. I remember the last time we went this late, it was at my old apartment. I remember closing down at 9:31, which would have put us at about 2 hours and 1 minute. But right now we're at about 1 hour 45. So it's been a really great episode. We had some faces come back that I haven't seen in a while, which is awesome. A lot of new faces, a lot of great questions, good conversations. Basically just appreciate all of you showing up here and doing this. One of the things that's been happening for me is that a lot of people have been asking me to speak on events and interview me specifically about what we're doing here. And specifically around, I consider what we have going right here between the event, the chat of the event, which is awesome, the podcast, and the things that are happening on LinkedIn to be a community, right? So when I think about community, I think about it way more as movement than Slack channel. And so people have been asking me about how you build something successful, how you get people that have been showing up for a year, like David, and people to continue to show up. And the recipe and the ingredients that I just laid out to Jenny are about the same. The reason that people show up here is because they get a ton of value, and I'm hoping get a lot of professional advancement. That's what I want. That's what I want to have happen. And so love hearing the stories about people that have implemented some stuff and had a ton of success. The people that are doing Facebook ads, even though they hate Facebook, and are getting good results. I love seeing all that stuff, and I appreciate all of you, and can't wait to see you back here next Tuesday.
Have a good week, everybody.
See you, everyone. Hey, everyone. This is Chris Walker, the CEO of Refine Labs. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. We're also live for Demand Gen Live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday night, which will also go on the State of Demand Gen podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next time.